Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. You guys know that I did a shitload of reactions this week, but I had to get one of these out so I can keep on going through this series. We are here with another Hunter x Hunter reaction and breakdown, and we're starting right from episode 101. And where we left off in the last episode, Killua had, been attacked by a sniper octopus possessing some dude's body, and we left him hanging, literally. So let's just jump right in. Killua ends up talking to this octopus and tries to figure out the power of Flutter. The octopus uses its air cannon, when it was shooting, because it was shooting its gun with air, to push itself away from Killua, but he wasn't nearly fast enough, and Killua was able to catch him back up. And he gave him a choice. Tell me about this guy's power, or I'm going to drop you into the water. And Killua already deduced that the fish in the water were attacking anything that the blood makes him go crazy and attack anything injured. Ikago literally has, 6 of his limbs cut off, and he's bleeding, and they're attacking the water underneath him, and he's just got to let him drop. And Ikago is just like he has a split second where he decides between his life and betraying somebody, and he couldn't bring himself to betray Flutter, so he actually cuts off his own arm and goes to let himself fall into the water. Killua actually uses his yo-yo to catch him, and Killua explains to him that he thinks he's cool, and that he could tell by the look in his eyes that he would never get betray a friend. And Killua actually swings a yo-yo to save him. And as soon as Killua saves him, he gets attacked by a giant shark. The shark says he's going to bite through Killua and the pillar that he's hanging on all at once. And Killua is like, this is much better. I have no problem killing jerks like you. And he makes his, his I'm gonna kill you face. Spikes out, turns his hand into like the claw that he's been using since the very first season, and tears him to pieces. What he doesn't see is that the shark was a decoy. And I don't know if it was inside the shark or on the shark, was a frog-looking chimerian, a very small one, it looked like it was about this big. And as the shark's corpse fell, it fell behind Killua and stuck him with a pin. And I guess this pin has to do with these fish siblings that we're about to meet. Killua manages to get on dry land, and as soon as he gets on dry land, he hears talking in his head. And it, kind of bugs him out. He hears a buzzer. And next thing you know, a fish with a pointy nose goes through his hand. And he didn't feel the attack coming. He didn't sense any nen. All of a sudden, he just has a fish going straight through his hand. And then he gets hit again and again. And all of a sudden, markings appear on his body. And he looks in the water and he sees that his body looks like a dartboard. And he starts getting talked to by these siblings. The way we get an explanation of their power by the narrator, where she, through the pin, connects the target to his nen ability. And when he throws the darts, there is no attack until the darts already make contact with the board, and the fish are already there hitting you. And I guess the only downside to their attack is that if he misses his last shot, where he would have won the game, they receive all the damage that the target received. Well, Killua has no defense to this, and he literally just gets hit over and over and over again. But Killua, especially the way he is now, he is not going to give up. So, as he's taking all these hits, he starts to focus, and he gets his Killua face on. We actually get to see a quick shot of him charging his own body with electricity. And on the very last needle, it looks like Killua dies, because he gets a fish right through his forehead, which would pierce his brain. When this happens, it actually jumps us over to Meleoron and Gon, where Meleoron starts talking to Gon about them trusting each other, and he can't understand why Gon would trust him so easily. And Gon basically explains, it doesn't matter if you're lying to me or not. If you're not, cool, then we'll work together. If you are lying to me, then that makes it easier, because then I'll just kill you. He says it just like that, completely nonchalant. I will just kill you. And we get this shot of Gon. and you can just see the darkness is still coming out of him. We got a small glimpse of it when Morrow tested him right before this whole thing started, and now we can see that it's still there, still ready to come bursting out. We've never heard Gon make a threat like that. He doesn't make threats to kill people. You go back over to Killua, and the fish siblings come to check his body. You know, they want to eat, they want to taste the meat. And they're, you know, gloating and whatnot. They tell Flutter that they killed him. And Flutter goes, he's like, oh, we're going to go talk to Leo, let him know, you guys deserve a promotion. And as they're celebrating, all of a sudden, Killua shoots by them and takes their heads off. It turns out that Killua had used one of Ikago's suction cups to stick the fish to his forehead to make it look like he got hit in the forehead. But in reality, it never actually pierced his forehead. He had actually, you know, flooded his body with aura and was able to sense the fish dart as soon as it appeared and catch it, used by charging his arm with electricity. What he did was he charged the arm with electricity. Obviously, in both real life and most anime, electrical signals only go so far between your brain and your body. It's like the cornerstone of Goku's Ultra Instinct. Well, to make his reaction time faster, he charged his arm with electricity, so as soon as his Nen sensed the attack, his muscles would contract and catch the dart. So, when in reality, his normal reaction time, he would never been able to catch it, but through Nen, he was able to. And then he explained how he figured out from the very first shot what kind of game this guy was playing. It turns out that not only has Killua watched professional darts, he's trained in professional darts as part of his assassination training. And he knew what somebody with that much pride in their skill would go by official rules. So he knew where the last shot was going to have to go. Well, Killua goes to leave while these two are literally heads just arguing amongst themselves before they die. And he starts to collapse from blood loss. Between the shots from Ikago, because those shots never stopped bleeding. The flea bullets in his neck, his arms, they never stopped bleeding. Not to mention the fact that he has a bunch of holes in him now because of these fish darts. Well, as he was about to pass out from bleeding out, you know, he's literally in a pool of his own blood. Ikago shows up, picks him up, and takes off with him. And he tells him, you know I shouldn't be doing this. I'm betraying all the other Chimera ants. Even Killua says they're going to hunt you down. And he's like, it's true. But you said a no-good octopus like me was cool. And I should have mentioned it before, but Killua said, in another world we could have been friends. And Ikago, reiterates that point. And he jumps into a water, catching a current that's supposed to take them right to an unlicensed doctor who can help Killua. And that's where episode 100 ends. We basically got to see Killua take an ass whooping, show off a little bit, and then make a new friend that saved his life. It was a pretty bittersweet episode. But now we go on to 102, and we don't know what's going on with Killua. We actually don't see him this whole episode. But we start off with going with Melioron, and they're sitting, talking. Melioron apparently is a smoker, and Melioron starts talking about his ability. Well, as a chameleon, he can basically turn invisible, but his actual Nen ability is called Perfect Plan, where basically, as long as he's holding his breath, his existence basically vanishes. Not only does he become invisible, his scent is gone, his Nen aura is gone. It's like Zetsu on crack. Even Gon, as powerful as he is, with his Gyo, with his En, he can't even tell that he's there. And it turns out that Melioron is sitting right in front of him. As they're talking, they start walking, because, Gon's still on his journey to get from point A to point B. We get to find out why Melioron wants to work with Gon. It turns out that he wants to take out Meruem. He wants to take out the king, because the king killed somebody very important to him. You guys remember the penguin chimera ant, whose name I can never remember? Turns out his name was Peggy. And Peggy actually mattered to Melioron, but he didn't know it at the time. Melioron, over time, gained memories back from when he was a human, which is weird to me, and it kind of feels like Assassin's Creed, kind of. Because the whole point of the Chimerians is they, through phagogenesis, whatever the queen ate, those traits would pass to the next generation. And it just reminds me of Assassin's Creed, because in Assassin's Creed, they talk about memories being in a person's DNA, or in DNA in general. Like, it's not just instinct that birds fly south for the winter. It's in their DNA. So I just thought that was kind of cool. But it turns out that Peggy in human life was actually Melioron's foster father, and Melioron, loved him. So once it hit him, what the king did, because he watched Peggy get killed, he wants vengeance on the king. And he wants Gon's help to do that because Gon is so powerful. After finding this out, Gon, it solidifies Gon's resolve to work with Melioron, and they shake hands. And when they do, Melioron shows his real ability, and he calls it God's accomplice. Basically, as long as he's touching somebody, they can also use his perfect plan. So as long as he's holding his breath, both him and the person he's holding on to are completely invisible. And they prove how powerful it is by walking up to a bird and poking it in the head, and the bird just doesn't even realize that they're there. Not until he lets his breath out and it realizes it's going to touch him and it flies away. I did get a little ahead of myself, but while they were talking, we also found out that the bat and owl chimera ants were actually sent after Gon by Melioron, because he wanted to see how strong Gon was. Obviously, we know how that turned out, but it turns out that he didn't care that they got hurt because of the fact that they were actually eating humans behind his back. So they were ass. Gon ends up telling Melioron that he doesn't think he's the partner for Melioron because he doesn't think he's strong enough to be able to really do damage to the king with his ability or not. So he tells him, I know some people who can help you out. I know someone who'll be a better partner for you. Well, Melioron is very iffy about it. He's just like, just because I trust you doesn't mean I'll trust somebody else just because you trust them. Well, he's just like, I'm going to give them a call. You can see them for yourself. I won't even tell them you're here. He calls up Knuckle and Shoot, and he immediately gets yelled at by Shoot because what Gon and Killua have been doing, trying to warn people about what's going on with the king and whatnot, has actually screwed up the plan really bad about what they're supposed to do. They were supposed to stay hidden the entire time. But he also says he approves of what they've done because he doesn't think, 50 million people should just be slaughtered. So they've altered the plan where we've seen Moral in the capital using one of his Nen abilities to create a bunch of smoke soldiers to basically keep surveillance over the capital city, as well as fight any soldiers being controlled by Pito. No, it's going around making portals, gathering intel, and we actually get to see this cool shit. This is Netero gathering energy, prepping for the fight, and he just looks so badass. We actually see a bird flying toward it, and then as soon as it senses his energy, he flies the other way, and it's just like he's a dog. The last 10 minutes of the episode, we actually jump back to the palace with Meruem, and we see how Meruem has been, passing the time over the days leading up to the selection. Turns out he's been playing games, chess, shogi, go, against masters, the top players in the country, and just smoking them. And and the way he sees it is he should be able to beat any opponent at anything, even what they're special at, because he's the king. Because he's that great. He's the pinnacle of evolution. He can learn at an accelerate, all this shit. So he beats a shogi champion, ends up killing him when he tries to run away. He plays against a go champion. After, I think it was 4 or 5 games, he beats the Go champion. The Go champion comes up with a bunch of excuses. I'm tired, I'm sick. Meruem says, go get some rest. You got 8 hours. Take some medicine. I want you at your best. Rest like you mean it, because after this, I won't take any excuses. And it was cool. But then he finds out about the last game that's played in the country, which is Gungi. As soon as I heard the name Gungi, I was ready, because I knew who was coming. Meruem takes the time to read the rules about Gungi, while Yopi goes against the champion. And we meet. The last scene we see of episode 102 is this, where we see Komugi come in. Now, at this point, I didn't know a whole lot about Komugi. I just know that she is pivotal in the change that occurs in the king. and I was ready to finally see what kind of character she was. Well, episode 103 starts. We get the introduction to Mugi, and turns out she's a moron. She freaks out at first. She bows down to the king, and when he starts talking to her, he's just like, I need to read the rules, and then we'll play. So you need to wait. She starts talking. She's like, you don't sound like the king, and he's just like, I'm not. That dude's dead. I'm the new king. And she just accepts it because she has to. And she starts talking. She's like, I'm sorry. I'm actually kind of stupid. I don't mean to do some of the things I do. And he just tells her to shut up. She's a distraction. He needs to read the rules. Well, once he's done reading the rules and tells her we can play, she's passed out on the floor. Her nose was all stuffed up and drippy, and she actually shut her mouth so tightly to stay quiet that she passed out from not breathing. And even Meruem had to comment on how stupid she was. Well, now we get started. So as they get ready to start prepping the game for Gungi, her eyes open up, and that's the first time that he realizes that she's blind. He asks her, she says yes, but she can't help but keep her eyes open while she's playing. If it bothers him, she'll do her best to keep them closed, but she wants him to, announce his moves. And as soon as they go to start, he even says that the atmosphere just changed because she becomes a much more serious person. And I thought it was cool because they really played it up, but then they cut us off. I was a little sad about that. But when we went back over to Gon, and he's met up with Knuckle and Shoot, and they're trying to get a hold of Killua. They can't. And I guess Killua had told Gon that he would always initiate contact, so that way he wouldn't get a call while he's sneaking around and get caught. But we know what's really going on with Killua. Well, while this exchange is happening, Melioron is actually watching them. And, well, at first he's like, this guy looks like he's always looking for a fight. This guy looks like he's afraid and suspicious of everything. How am I supposed to trust these guys? That guy's super aggressive. That guy probably wouldn't let me get a word in. And then something absolutely cute happens where a bunch of dogs come up to Gon, and Gon's petting them. He's like, where do these dogs come from? And Knuckles is like, there's a bunch of strays, leave them alone. But he's like, they all have collars. And Shoot explains that Knuckle has been taking care of a dog of every town they've gone through that spook. Because all the animals got left behind when, the people either up and left or died. And Knuckles been taking care of them, and he did the best he could for every single animal, except for the ones that were too far gone, so tired and hungry, so skinny that they couldn't eat, or the ones that were too loyal to leave their homes. Every other animal he just straight up adopted, and I'm just like, it's so cute. And he starts crying, and even Melioron was touched by it, and he's just like, at first he's like, this isn't going to change my opinion of them, and then he's like, yeah, it might. And then we jump back over to the king, and this is where I started getting excited, because it shows us the end of the Gungi match, and Mugi was able to not only beat the king, but she was able to beat the king with basic strats. And he even explains that she doesn't see him as an actual opponent yet. He sends her off to go get rest after they play all the way into the night. And he explains to her that even though she offers to keep playing, he wants her to get rest because he has a rematch against the Go player. Once they're done, he'll play her some more. As she leaves, Shower Poof shows up, and he's just like, how's it going, sir? And he explains, a few more games, I'll get her to play seriously. A few more games after that, I'll learn her patterns. After that, I can throw off her rhythm, and then I'll win. It's the same with every game. Yopi comes in with a giant smile on his face and a suicide note from the Go player that Meruem beat the day before. I guess he straight up committed suicide. He didn't have it in him to play against Meruem again. And Meruem laughs his ass off that the dude killed himself, and says, go get that idiot, bring her back. We go over back to the capital, and we see Moro using his ability called Deep Purple. And we find out how it works. He basically puts a nucleus, a ball of Nen, inside a soldier made of smoke, and he's able to do it at different concentrations. The less Nen he uses, the more soldiers he can make, up to like 200 something. But what he did with these was that he decided to make only 50, but make the Nen them more powerful so they can operate on their own and will actually have a better fighting chance against the Nen-controlled soldiers. And he doesn't need to directly control them. He just needs to give them, do this, and they'll figure it out from there. And while he's jumping around the city, he actually sees Chitu, and Chitu confronts him. And down on the ground, we see Leo looking up at both of them. Turns out Chitu not only got APR exercise from him, he also has a new Nen ability. And Leo wants to see what happens, and he's like, no matter what happens, I win. Because either Moral's too exhausted, he's just going to kill Moral, or Chitu now owes him a favor. Chitu rushes Moral, hits Moral, and it activates Chitu's Nen ability. Chitu's Nen ability basically conjures a separate space that looks like a savannah, but it's basically a giant dome. And there's an hourglass in the middle that times for 8 hours. And he tells Moral, you have 8 hours to tag me, and that's the only way you're getting out of here. He doesn't tell him what happens at the end of 8 hours, but, you know, Moral being Moral, starts using his brain, walks to see how far he's got, finds the edge. He tries to smash the hourglass, it doesn't work, and he decides to take a nap. Tells Chitu to wake him up in 5 hours. And Chitu gets agitated because he thinks Moral's playing with him, but Moral, you know, comments that Chitu thinks this is a battle of speed. It's not, it's a battle of willpower. I don't quite understand what he means, but we'll find out in the next episode. One thing I almost forgot that Moral said when the fight started, he was trying to figure out what happened to Knuckles' ability. I guess their whole strategy revolves around Shoot and Knuckle. Shoot can trap people, and once Knuckle hits somebody, you know, his APR will tick so high, and then it'll shut off their Nen for a month. And their whole plan kind of revolves around that strategy for dealing with the Royal Guard. But he thinks Chitu is an exorcist. So if Chitu is an exorcist, he needs to get rid of him now. That's why he immediately goes to fight him. Then he finds out that he has this ability, and that the exorcist must be somebody else. I guess an exorcist is really, really, really bad for Knuckle, because they can just get rid of APR. Well, with Moral now taking a nap, we jump back to the city, and we see one of Flutter's dragonflies chasing Nove around the city. Nove had seen Chitu and Moral disappear, so he was going around to, you know, continue his job. Deep Purple's still in effect, so that's good. We go back over to the king, or the palace, where P2 gets off the phone with Leo. Leo had asked for more reinforcements because he needed them to, you know, get the job done. And after P2 talks to him on the phone, P2 goes up to Showerpoof and asks him how it's going. And he's just like, it's not going well. All these games and the king still can't beat her. And right there, we actually see Mogi beat him again with a move that he didn't see coming. And he even says that it's impossible for her to win that way unless she was protecting every move I was going to make from the get-go. Which is crazy. So he concedes and he wants to play again. And she's like, she's down for it. And that's where the episode ends. So far, I'm really interested to see the interaction between the king and Mugi, because this is the first person he hasn't just up and slaughtered. She is adorable and adorably stupid, but when she plays this game, like, she's like a whole different person, and I love when shows do stuff like that. How Moral's going to counter Chitu's speed, who knows? Like, I don't know the limits of what he can actually do with that smoke. I'm very scared for Gon, as he keeps on going down darker and darker paths, and we still don't know what the hell's going on with Killua. There are so many questions up in the air right now, so many things I want to see in the next episode, but that is it for this review and breakdown, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please drop a like. I do at least one of these a week, and I want to keep going until we get to the end of Hunter x Hunter. After we get to the end of Hunter x Hunter, I don't know what anime I'm going to watch next. But that's it from me, guys, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.